Well, I'm so delighted to have with me today Robin Craigen from Moving Mountains. You may recall, if you listened to the 500th episode of the podcast, that Robin was part of the panel that we did on that day, talking about where this business is going. And there was so much that Robin talked about then that I hadn't heard before. I really wanted to get him on his own, one-on-one, and have a really good conversation. So welcome, Robin. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Heather. It's exciting to be back, and nice to have you to myself for a few minutes.
Well, we've sort of crossed paths over the years, and we've never really had a chance to sit down and have a chat. And I love, I love what you're doing with Moving Mountains from what I can see from the website, and from hearing you on everybody else's podcast. Everybody else has got in before me. When I started out in 2014, I got everybody for the first time. Now, they're coming on. It's like, oh, I was on this podcast and that podcast. And so...
but Heather, your podcast is so well established. I feel like I've finally arrived now that I have actually made it to your podcast. So,
well, thank you. That is very kind. I'm thinking, like, here am I, sort of still plodding on, and there's just hundreds of them coming in now, all these new ones, and
so many lonely nights waiting for the invite. I'm finally here.
Well, here you are now, and
Yep.
I've spent some time listening to some of the podcasts that you've been on, and I've looked at I have a thing about us pages on websites, and I think that every property manager and every host should be open and transparent and tell the people that are visiting that page who they are and where they've come from and why they're passionate about the business. And your About Us page on Moving Mountains is just lovely. I learned so much about you that was so interesting. And you've had such a varied life so far that has you ended up into this vacation rental industry. I'd love to have a little bit of a potted, tell everybody this potted history of Robin Craigen and what those experiences that you've had over the years have taught you about running a successful company.
Yeah, I have told the story a few times, but the potted history would be after finishing business school that I had aspirations to get a ski season out of my system. So I said before I get a job in the city of London and become a stockbroker that I'm going to do this and do it once and for all. And to be honest, one thing led to another. One ski season led to a summer in the Greek islands, led to another ski season. My entrepreneurial spirit began during that time. Had some experiences at college that kind of showed me what is possible. I kind of came back from the ski business and set up a windsurfing vacation company that ended up being sold to a much larger business. During that time, I learned, kind of like we learned along the way, of the things that we like and we don't like. And what I learned is I didn't really love working for a big company. And in 1991, a guy came into the office and said, there's this thing, the Gulf War, we're looking to reduce staff. We're looking to start with who wants to leave first. And mine was one of the first hands in the air. I took that opportunity to take kind of a sabbatical, went a little windsurfing, sitting on the beach, and pondered my future and decided that in my dreams was the idea that before I get myself tied down to too much more, I was going to sail across the Atlantic. That journey, hitchhiking across the Atlantic with a flow of boats that goes across every year, took me to the Caribbean. I had spent some time that previous summer getting a captain's license, and I began a career as a yachtsman. That's a very fun lifestyle for someone in their 20s into my early 30s, yacht racing and yacht chartering. I learned all about that. And during that time, my girlfriend, who became my wife, Heather, and my business partner, and together we ran a 72-foot yacht in the British Virgin Islands. And I feel like, that journey of, I like being around people that are on vacation. I like that travel industry in itself. When we brought that to the situation of Endless Summer 2, the yacht we used to run, it was kind of the culmination of all of that. Plus, I was being shown how to provide a level of hospitality that ultimately transitioned into the company that we formed to bring ourselves to land to raise a family in Colorado. And we took so much of what we learned from that journey into, this is how we're going to do Moving Mountains. This is the experience that we're going to offer. All the things that we did for people on the yacht, anticipating their every need, making a complicated potentially complicated vacation into a much simpler, much more fun vacation experience. Well, we just did all of that for a ski vacation. And that was the beginning. We started with the one house. We used to joke that this one house was like our yacht on the side of the hill. Didn't move at night. We slept better than we'd slept in the last 4 years. People didn't try and park their house next to us in the middle of the night. But that was the beginning of the story, and many things for us filled in the way that we had dreamed. We had a couple of kids, we raised our family, and we began growing this business. And we applied so many of the things that we had learned from working on a boat about being resourceful and looking ahead and never taking things for granted. Everything, to be honest, everything seemed so much easier doing hospitality in a house than doing it on a yacht.
I cannot imagine the yacht charter business. having spent some time with my son and his wife on their catamaran for when they were doing their sailing trip for a year. It's a very small space. And we were family. Maybe that's worse, actually. Maybe it's worse being family. But when you've got people, and granted, yours was 72 foot. That was quite a bit longer than theirs was. How many people did you take out on the yacht?
So it was an average of about 6 to 8 guests. So very comfortable with 3 crew, myself and Heather as the chef, and we had a first mate. But what we really took away from that experience is how much we could influence the outcome of that week. It wasn't just about taking people to the 6 or 7 spots that we were going to visit during the week. It was about the extra things that we could put into it. And I mean, I was stepping into a well-oiled machine. The owner, Barry, had really been doing this for many years. It was, his turning point was hiring Heather, who ultimately kicked him off his boat to bring me in as the captain. That became our opportunity to kind of take what he had been doing over the years and take it to another level. And I think it was a journey for him too, thinking, well, what am I doing? Giving my guests, my repeat guests that I've been cultivating to these 2 kids, and then him realizing that it wasn't going to be the same experience, but it wasn't that it was a negative either. He had shown Heather and the first mate at that time really everything that he wanted to put into it, and we just simply took that to the next level. And I still think about things that we do now every day that really trace back to our experiences of working on the boat and just how we think about things. I mean, a lot of our approach to property management, it's one part to say that we're in the hospitality business, but a big part of being able to deliver these experiences is being trusted with these incredible homes that we manage. And I think our approach to property management was very aligned with how we were trained to maintain the yacht. This constant proactive versus reactive. The last thing you want to be doing is fixing something while you have guests on the boat that are trying to have a good time. This is my dreaded nightmare, to have to pull up the floor to the engine room while we're sailing to somewhere and try and figure out why the engine won't start or something like that. So, it turns into the checklist that we do in the off season that are proactive maintenance steps, cleaning out dry vents and checking washer hoses. And during the winter, we're always looking at the roofs of the houses we manage to wait for where the ice dam is going to form, because that's going to bring water into the house. All those things, have over the years turned into a steady trickle of reservations that we have captured sometimes because other people were not maintaining their homes as well. And we would benefit from those guests that were getting displaced because there was a problem with the home that they were staying in. And for us, it's been a process of reducing down the calls that we're getting at 7 o'clock at night. That's a frustration to our team, to have to deal with something when you have a guest in the house who's disappointed and needs us to come solve a problem.
So let's go back to the beginning again. What were your goals when you started? Did you? Well, let's start with, how many properties do you have now?
We're at about 200 right now, and we're looking at some opportunities to branch out beyond mountains into beaches and oceans. But the core of what we do is we manage about 200 luxury homes in 4 ski markets. So Steamboat, that's our home base; Breckenridge, Vale and Beaver Creek.
So when you started, was 200 your goal? Was 300 your goal?
No, no. And in fact, that's been one of my messages to, I've done some panels and things like that and so on at conferences. And I've said to people, I think it might have made a real difference to how we did so many things. Maybe we'd even gone into this with a vision of, we're trying to create this portfolio of homes. We were the opposite of that. Our vision, the company was Moving Mountains Chalet. We started with one house, and that was our vision of that was the horizon for us. When we took on a second home, which I think was in the third year, it was as simple. We just added an S. When we 10 years later took on the management of a very large private residence club at the base of the ski mountain, then we dispensed with the term chalets because we kind of broadened our experiences into things that didn't fully fit the description of a chalet. And we became Moving Mountains, and that sort of speaks to, we're at this point. Okay, let's take this fork in the road and let's go in that direction. And, it wasn't until 2019 that even though we've been hearing it from our guests for many years, that if we were in different markets, they would follow us to those markets. It wasn't until 2019 that we actually grew outside of Steamboat Springs. And that has been kind of the trajectory that we've been on for the last 4 or 5 years now of rapid growth and realizing that there's a lot more potential to our business.
So would you say that was your tipping point, 2019, and when you decided to branch out, and from there it's been, as you say, upward trajectory since?
I think people look at you and think 200 homes, you make it look easy, and it's like without realizing that we spent 20 years getting to 100 properties, and we were very thoughtful about every step of the way. And my biggest concern that I voiced over and over was, I don't want people to say that Moving Mountains was a great company 5 years ago when it was small and family friendly and felt like everybody had their fingers on everything. And it's been our challenge. We've kind of challenged ourselves to say, can we continue to make the experience as good as what made us successful in the first place? Can we continue to do that, at 200 properties, which amazingly, and I credit our team every step of the way for this, is we're making it happen. It's really been amazing.
You mentioned a number of times the guest experience, and how important that is. In your 10 biggest mistakes, which is your list that is going into Brooke Fouts' book.
Wish I'd seen that book 20 years ago.
I know, me too. When I read some of those, I thought, yes.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, I did mention at the beginning that I'll be talking a little bit more about how you can get hold of the book and how you can come along to the webinar and hopefully see Robin there and myself and 50 others maybe towards the end of August. So I'll be talking about that after this interview is over. But in your list, you said that failing to develop standards that provide a consistent guest experience was a mistake. At what point did you decide that was an issue and you needed to resolve it? Was there one particular incident, or was it something that happened over time?
Well, it's been over many years, but of saying, we are the product of our failures more than our successes, in terms of we made mistakes, we learned from it, we try not to repeat the same mistake again. And one of the mistakes that we made early on was taking on a home that maybe didn't deliver the wow factor and didn't have the consistency of some of the other homes. We were fortunate that we started at the top end of the market, and that was kind of our core. And then other property owners came to us and said, hey, we'd love to work with you guys. Take a look at our home. We'd go and say, yeah, seems like a nice home. Let's add this. Maybe it's good to have something different. What we realized is, along with the services that we provide, and we don't just rent someone a house, we try to do everything for them, just as we used to do on the boat. We're arranging groceries and lift tickets and ski school and private instruction and these kind of things as a typical standard. We realized that guests coming into a lower budget home that maybe didn't have so many bells and whistles didn't want the same services, didn't appreciate everything we were putting into it. And if we did have a guest who had stayed with us in one of our nicer homes go to this home because maybe it was all we had available, then there was this disappointment of, well, this home doesn't have flat screen TVs. We've been in the business so long that we've seen the arrival of the flat screen TV. And it was all things like that are the bells and whistles that become an expectation. That in the beginning, you're excited when you get a house like that. When you've been doing this a while, then today the conversation with a new owner is it's a requirement. We certainly don't want to see anything other than a flat screen TV. We have an expectation that your home's going to have a hot tub and a grill. There's got to be some wow factor. There's got to be a decent view. It's got to be in a good location. And then we began with standardizing things like the kitchen inventory and saying our guests, like many guests in vacation homes, they truly want to entertain. So there's an expectation of serving dishes, baking trays, bake whatever you need for baking, which might go far and beyond what the average owner who's runs down to Walmart and picks up a standard pack of plates and knives and forks and says, "Oh, this will do." It's not. We're not a cheap and cheerful operation, and where we fail to meet that standard of some of the other homes, we quickly realized that we needed to start kind of drawing a line and saying, "This is us. This is what we represent in the market." And thinking about my own experiences of occasionally staying in a hotel and realizing, we kind of graduate towards staying in a Marriott hotel because that bed is comfortable wherever you are. And that became a goal of ours is, well, why not have the same linens and the same bedding experience in every one of our homes? Here we are, 3 years after we began that initiative to go right through the portfolio. Now you can say that the same sheets are on every bed in every home that we manage.
A lot of what you said really resonated with me because I remember starting out in the business back in 2003. And then, and most people, when they start out, you take whatever comes at you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's cast-offs from other property managers.
Yeah.
But it's fine because it's inventory. But it comes the point where you've got to make that decision. And I think it's almost for many of us, it's that luxury of being able to select the properties and be ultra selective.
I think that's a stage of life in property management. You're getting somewhere when.
Yes.
And it's like when you say to the owner, "I'm not taking your house unless you do X, Y, Z, and it's got to have this, this, and this." And I mean, it's a beautiful thing to watch my team come back to me and say, "Yeah, I told them we weren't taking it unless they did X, Y, Z." And that sometimes probably 9 out of 10 homes that are knocking on the door we don't end up taking. That's a milestone. And if you're out there as a property manager and you've had that experience, you should know that you're making real progress.
I recall, I think 2020, I can't remember when I sold my company now, 2021, the year before. And I look back on how many owner inquiries we had, something over 300 owner inquiries in that year. And I think we took on less than 20 properties out of that 300. And that,
jokingly,
that was luxury.
Other property managers, we all talk about how we're slowly educating the vacation rental owners of this world to how to be a better owner. It's a two-way street. In fact, I think I kind of learned it from one of my owners when we were doing a video testimony, and he was willing to sort of speak about what the experience had been, and he kind of said it back to me in this video of halfway through the first meeting with Robin and going through our home, I realized he was interviewing me as much as I was interviewing him.
Yes, and I think that's when you realize that you are achieving success, and you've
exactly
not necessarily made it, because I don't think we ever do that, but you've got to that level.
You've learned from your mistakes. I mean, when when an owner says, "Well, we're going to use it for all the busiest times of the year, we just need you to fill in a couple of gaps here and there," we just shake our heads. It's like, what we put into onboarding your home and bringing it into the marketplace and building a clientele for your home, that isn't going to work. And you learn to ask those questions before going down that path and being frustrated with the experience. And maybe you're frustrating them too, because you haven't spoken at all.
So do you have a team of people who go out and have these discussions, or is it just you?
No, it's no longer me. We have truly a business development team. It's really exciting to see the people that we have on our team and how they've taken the ball and they just run with it. So Katie Bell is our business development director. She is out there building these inquiries, grilling the owners along with the general manager in that particular market. They'll go out and meet with the homeowner, walk through the experience, and really, learn to set expectations about what it is what is it that you're looking for? What is it that we can provide? That's it's the benefit perhaps of being in the market for as long as we have. Many of these inquiries are coming referred to us from realtors and other locals in the marketplace. It isn't that uncommon for people to come and say, well, 3 or 4 people basically told me, for the kind of home that we have, you're really the only company that we should be looking at. And, it's not as if we would sit before them and say, well, how do we win your business? We are fond of saying we're not the cheapest in the market. We're also not trying to cut corners. And I think that has maybe been the challenge of the last few years when you've seen so many new types of companies coming into this business, the disruptors, the mass market companies saying we can do more. We're a tech company. We've got all these tools without realizing that we have all those same tools ourselves, but we're actually local in the markets and we've been doing this a while, and you can't cut corners in this business. It's about what happens when things go wrong is typically where you show your value. And I don't love to paint that picture when I'm onboarding somebody and saying, you're going to be glad you signed us. Mm-hmm. When on Christmas Eve, your hot tub goes down and we've got a guy who'll leave his Christmas dinner to come and fix that hot tub because he values the relationship he's had with us for the last 15 years.
Exactly. A lot of what you're saying falls right into Matt Landau's limited edition, and I know you spend a lot of time.
Oh, yeah. We speak the same language there for sure.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the more unconventional approaches you take to enhance your guest satisfaction and loyalty.
Maybe this speaks to where we came from, and maybe it was a naivete in the beginning that we really went into our first chalet, which was a catered ski chalet, slightly upscale from a standard vacation rental, but we really sat and thought about what is it we want to provide? What is the experience? And we weren't guided by anything else that was in the market. We didn't come in with the idea of saying, well, let's do what these guys are doing. We almost said, let's do the opposite. And it's been interesting to watch more established management companies, and Steamboat particularly, move away from talking about, Unit 101 to suddenly they've started giving them names. And one day they announced about 10 years ago, we're going to start market units individually. Light bulb moment, like, wait, what homeowner wants to hear that? That finally you're going to treat them as an individual. Whereas we were able to go into the marketplace and say, we will represent you individually, your home, your view, your furnishings, your amenities. This will be a unique experience. And these guests are booking your home. And it's bizarre to think, I feel like that's become more the standard now, but it's bizarre to think that we were changing the rules of the game at the time. We also came in with the idea we were going to have direct booking relationships with guests. We were at the early days of the internet. And so it was an expectation that people were booking with us direct. There weren't OTAs. We were one of the first people signing on with VRBO and Airbnb when they came to the marketplace. But by that time, we'd been in business several years and we had a book of clients that they didn't even know about these platforms. So, it is interesting in terms of our time place in the industry and how OTAs and distribution is something relatively new to us and to the industry. But I think our mindset was always about, we are a relationship business. It's our relationship with our homeowners, our relationship with our guests, that's going to secure the future of this business. And we've never strayed away from that, but it's been like a bit of a kind of like you stop in your tracks when you meet somebody who's been in the business 3 years and has 300 homes and probably doesn't know any of those homeowners really on the level that we know our homeowners. And they talk about owner churn, they talk about guest churn, they talk about the reliance on the platform. In fact, I even remember asking at one of the breakout sessions in one of the conferences to somebody, is like, what's your direct booking strategy? And he looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. He's like, well, what do you mean? They just go back on Airbnb and they book again the next year. It's like, well, yes, you're in bed with Airbnb forever.
So this being the case, I had Annie Holcomb on on the podcast last week, she called me an OG, old guard, and because we were same as you, we started in 2003. We were direct booking from the very beginning. Before, and does anybody out there who's been in the business 3 years now ever heard of HomeAway?
No.
But me, I too see these. There's 200, 300 homes, and we've just been in business for 2 or 3 years. Do you think this is the way it's going? Do you think the relationship business is going to disappear over time?
I don't. In fact, I think it's our superpower. I'll go back to Matt Landau's theory of limited edition. I honestly think that it's the thing that reassures me that we will always have a future in this industry. There is a place for commoditized lodging experiences. There were property management companies managing thousands of units before vacation rentals became a thing. But that is becoming more understood by the consumer. If you pay $60 a night for a condo down by the beach, your expectations probably aren't that high. You are expecting to get codes by text and to have a property manager that may or may not show up within 24 hours if you have a problem. And that has worked for certain types of lodging for many years. But the opportunity for, it fits to certain segments of the market. So depending on the kind of experience you're looking to have with your family, I feel like our opportunity is those families that have stayed with us. Many people say, I've stayed all over and finally I found you guys and I'm not going to stray away from that now. That's the value in building a brand. That is the path that the hotels have shown us can work. So when you start thinking about building a brand, especially if you're going to grow into different markets and saying, well, this brand represents consistency and value and a high touch level of service in any area that they operate, as long as we don't stray from that standard, then I think that we have an opportunity to continue growing a business. But it's probably not going to succeed with 10,000 or 20,000 units in beach markets where there's just thousands of condos side by side and they're all trading based on, $1 or $2 per night difference in the nightly rate. That isn't the game that we're in.
Yeah. And yes, you call units, I hear keys, doors.
Units and keys. I don't allow that word. I have to train new hires that word doesn't belong in this company. And we have a short list of other terms and so on that we don't allow. It speaks to the mindset, right? Our thought is you're staying in a home. That is the value proposition. Families like to be in a home, and home says comfort and security and safety and fun, privacy.
Yeah, exactly. We took years to actually move the Ontario market from calling guests renters, and we were the first to say no, they're not renters, they're guests.
Right.
And still, in fact, I went back over some old blog posts I wrote way back in sort of 2008 and 2009 recently, and I was calling them renters. So but we made those changes, and things will continue to.
Yeah, we figure it out who we want to be, and we kind of learn what resonates. And I can't say that we knew all the answers on day one by any means. I think we've learned who we are, and we've recognized the value of different things. I think to the power of personal connection, it was a learning experience realizing that and take advantage of any opportunity to make a connection, personal connection with the guest. So it begins for us with doing a personal check-in, in-home check-in, which when I've done a vacation rental, I've always loved having a host meet me at the house and get us dialed in, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. That's enough to kind of set the tone for the beginning of the stay. When you've just arrived, you've been traveling all day long, and you have no idea where anything is. It gets more comfortable as every day goes by, but I think you accelerate that process when you have an in-person check-in. And, we have our people that show up with, if there's kids in the group, they go with teddy bears and coloring books, and there's an extra little opportunity to surprise and delight. The kids are like, wow, and they start running around, and it's like we've just learned that if the kids are happy, the parents are happy.
Oh yeah. Now, do you know that still applies when the kids are in their 30s?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's take a step aside, and I want to talk about your tech.
Yeah.
Please, how has your tech changed over the years, and what's in your tech stack now?
Well, yeah, my tech in the beginning, I mentioned this at the last VRMA International. We started with spreadsheets, I think very much as you did, and that was because there really weren't a lot of property management systems. I think the big one back then, first choice or whatever it was, that was too big and expensive for us when we started. We did start with the spreadsheets. We've been through 4 various iterations of property management system, but we've arrived. We're using Track today, and I think we have a pretty first-in-class tech stack. But now what we're realizing is that we need to consolidate that down into a more integrated solution. I feel very fortunate that we're doing this business at this time, in the evolution of the industry, because there's so much great technology available today that wasn't around 5 years ago, that wasn't around 10 years ago. We were jumping up and down when we got our first online reservation, and now 20% of the guests that book with us, click on our website and make a reservation, and maybe don't even really talk to us that much. And, that continues to be something that we benefit from, because we also know that the consumer expectation is they want an Amazon level shopping experience, right? It's very hard for a small company like us to develop a technology that serves up the vacation to them, that they can just go, oh, that's good. Click, buy, $15,000, send, confirmed. All that automation. I think of all the various things that are now an expectation that just roll off the platform, that used to involve talking to the guest for hours, minutes, days, even sending a booking form proposal to them by fax, waiting for that fax to come back. The fax machines chews it up the first time that it prints it. You have to get them to resend it, and all these things. Everything was so manual over the years. And, I go back to the travel industry. I've been doing this for way too long. And back to the days of having to send brochures to people. When I worked in the travel industry in London, you used to put an ad in the Sunday Times, get a phone call on Monday. Hey, could you send me your brochure? You'd send the brochure. A week later, you get a phone call. They make a reservation. 1 reservation on average for every 25 brochures that we'd send out. So you realize how the industry has changed.
I remember.
I'm riding a high right now with everything that we have at our fingertips.
Yeah, I remember when I started in the business back in the 90s, and started a company called Clearwater Holidays, and we were marketing Ontario cottages to the British market. And I remember going to Bournemouth to a travel show, a travel exhibition, and we had all these very expensive glossy brochures printed, and did exactly that. We had our ads in the Times and the Telegraph, and we got that odd booking here and there. And yeah, look at where we are now. Definitely old guard.
Definitely old guard. But I mean, maybe that just helps us to appreciate how good the tech is today. We're using Breezeway for operations management. That has replaced the big whiteboard that had to be transcribed every day with who was coming, who was leaving, who was cleaning, who was doing what tasks. Having a system like that, again, it's a game changer in this industry, because it allows you to think about doing more with the people that you have and being more consistent and more reliable. I can't believe how much we do just using live chat on our website. That people are reluctant to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, but they love live chatting with you, and they love texting you, and they pretty much want to book from their phone without talking to you. And
yes, I saw that so much more just in the last couple of years before we sold, that the live chat and the texting was it was what people wanted. Okay, we're sort of coming towards the end here, and of the time we have, and I wanted to ask you to give some advice to any aspiring short-term rental operators who might be listening to this, and I know there's a lot of them, who aim to achieve similar success. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I'd probably say go out and buy a copy of that book for starters, because there's a shortcut to many, many years of learning the hard way. I would say really try and figure out what it is you want to be early on. Maybe try to describe that vision, because it's going to influence the kind of technology that you decide to bring into your business. So if we had started saying, well, we're going to have 200 properties in 4 different markets and we're going to look at different options down the road, then I think we would have probably more early on, gone from more enterprise level software. But there are perfect software solutions out there for someone who says, I don't want to have more than 20 homes and I just want to be in the one market. And we all know that that can be a very good business model too. So I think identify your vision and the tools that you need to get there, because one of the most painful experiences that I know you've been through, and I've certainly been through, is changing your software as you grow. It's like pulling off your shell and putting on a new one. And that is one of the most, you go back so many steps in order to go forwards. Every year that we had to go through one of those big transitions was a year of flatline growth, because we were just completely distracted with making those transitions. I would really advise people to get to know who your competitors are in the market, because we really have had a good experience in our local markets where we talk about co-opetition as opposed to competition. So having respectful boundaries makes for a better business environment. And the fact that that's even possible speaks to the second part, is get to know the industry. Listen to podcasts like Heather's, and like the dozens of others that are out there now, because you can learn from the others in this industry, and we're willing to talk about our mistakes, and we're willing to talk about what's working, and go to conferences and really get a sense of what this industry is, because in that way, I think that you won't find yourself going off into left field trying to plow your own field and create something new. You might realize that, hey, there's an opportunity for me to replicate what these guys are doing in this place very effectively in this market, and to be aligned with meeting some of the other challenges that we're trying to overcome as an industry, like to be a good player. That maybe if collectively more of us could be good actors, then there would be less regulatory pressure on the industry. We're in catch-up mode because of the allowing so many individuals to just go out there and put the homes up on Airbnb and not care about how they were impacting the neighbors. So I think it's all things to do with, become aware of the industry and learn from others, because there is no playbook on how to do this, but there's a lot of information out there now that could guide you to a quicker path to being a successful business.
So if you were starting this all over again,
I'd never do it. I'd never do it.
not touch it with a barge pole. I was actually saying to somebody the other day, 20 years ago when we started, I had 7 homes of my own. Why did I not just continue to buy and sell homes?
Sure.
And that might have been a much easier path to go, and let somebody else manage them. But would thinking on those mistakes that you made, is there anything else that you would do differently if you started again that we haven't mentioned yet?
I think probably the only thing that we were slow getting there was about company culture. I think company culture, they never talked about it in the way that we use it in our business today. When I was in business school, that was never like, hey, today we're going to teach you about company culture. But it has been the most powerful force within our company. I would say early on, identify what your vision is for the business and identify what your culture is and what your values are, because getting your team to understand why you do what you do, this is a fun business to be in. To be around people that are on vacation and to have people say back to you, this is one of the best vacations we've ever had in our lives. That's a very meaningful career to have, to be creating those experiences. And when people choose to come back and do that again and again with you, it's like, I really feel good about what we do. And when we hear owners say, you guys do a great job of taking care of our home, it's sort of that validation. Well, it turns out that it's a nice thing to have validation for your work that's positive. So you feel good about going to work every day instead of feeling like, oh my God, I'm back to the coalface tomorrow.
Yeah, and I hear it from others, those who are really successful, like Lance and Elaine Stitcher,
Yes.
when they talk about their company culture, the Harrelsons in Alabama down at Orange Beach, Tyan Marsink, who's growing a lovely company in Branson, talks the same. You know, they
And the
talk
Casago
about their
team,
people. The
the car,
Casago team,
yeah,
absolutely, yes.
the fact that culture is becoming a day one topic at conferences in our industry is really a sign of good things. I think we're all
Yeah.
learning from each other, and I love how people love to share what their culture is. And I mean, we're all not that different, but the ones that are at the front of that are the ones that speak about culture on a weekly, if not daily, if not hourly basis.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to Lauren Madewell from Auntie Vellum's cabins in a couple of weeks' time, because company culture is very dear, I
Yeah,
know, to her
it looks
heart,
like
and
a fun place to work.
that looks like a really fun place to work. Robin, it's been an absolute pleasure
Thanks, Heather.
talking with you. Encourage everybody that's listening to go buy Brooke's book when it comes out. I'll be including some information on that in a few moments. But Robin's mistakes are in there, as are the mistakes of 51 others. So I can't. I'm looking out for my copy coming in the mail.
It's kind of the opposite approach to the way you think you would talk about your business, because we all like to talk about the good things, but I believe me, we all know we've made mistakes, and I mean the beautiful thing is being able to learn from that and not repeat them. So that's
Yeah.
what's made the industry what it is.
And it was always amazing to see how many we had in common.
Yes.
So it was good to look at that and say, oh, it wasn't just me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Robin, thank you so much. I know I will get to see you, speak to you at a conference near us in the upcoming months.
Look forward to
I'll
it.
look forward to that.
Yep. Thank you, Heather.